But on this battlefield, no one wins. We have a war with Russia, a war with China, nobody wins. That's why we don't have big wars anymore between superpowers, because it would end the planet, not just humanity. But we see major military buildup against Russia, major military buildup against China, China lowering its currency, China manipulating its stock market. No one out there predicted this in writing, on record, like Harry Dent at harrydent.com, best-selling author of The Demographic Cliff, made a lot of famous predictions that have been come true the last 20-plus years. He's been coming on our show 5, 6, I guess 7 years now, actually. But he's just been hammering that he believes China will be the big one to bring down the world economy for about 5 years at least. And you watch mainstream media, they just say it's incredibly wonderful, everything's going great. You're a conspiracy theorist if you think their stock market that's doubled the last 2 years is overvalued, or if you think their economy's rigged, you're crazy. If you think the sky's blue, you're insane. If you think, you know, you have turkey on Thanksgiving, it's a conspiracy theory. I mean, this is a war against reality happening. He, of course, has an MBA from Harvard Business School and Bain Company and strategy consultant for more than 100 companies. He's also been the CEO of several entrepreneurial growth companies and very, very successful in that ride. I'm not going to go over all of his bio. Folks know who he is here. But we're hitting the demographic cliff. And historically, with that, they'll try to start wars, a lot of other insanity. And you notice he used to be on about twice a year. Then he's on 3 or 4 times a year. Last year, now he's on every month. We appreciate him coming on. He even came on a few days after his dad died a few months ago, and we appreciate that. And now I'm really listening carefully because I want to hear how he thinks we might go over the cliff as we get closer to it. Are we going to see the big correction? 2008 bigger? What will it cause? They only increase the derivatives. They only increase what got us in this situation. Will there be new banker bailouts, new tax increases to give it to offshore corporations that cheat on their taxes? Mr. Dent is here to join us. He's got charts on civil unrest increasing, everything. We're going to go over these in the next hour. In the last 15 minutes or so, we'll take a few questions at 800-259-9231 for Mr. Dent. Okay, Mr. Crystal Ball, here we are. Now we've gotten closer to it. I'm sure you've got more of an electron microscope view of this. What in Hades is going on?
Well, you know, Alex, the biggest thing since we last talked, China's bubble in stocks finally burst. It means nothing when a stock bubble bursts 10% or 20%. That can just be an ordinary correction. 35% in a little over 3 weeks. And how much would it have been if the government had not come in with a $500 billion fund to buy their own stocks? And this came after the government in China had been buying empty real estate to prop up that market that's been falling. And after they created the greatest bubble in history by moving 500 million people, low-skilled people, from rural areas to urban areas in the shortest period of time in history, China is the greatest bubble in history. It is finally coming unraveled. That's why I am confident that we are within, I'd say, weeks of the global bubble bursting again. China was the first thing, actually before that in March. Germany, the leading market in Europe, looked like it peaked to me. And then the China crash in late May and end of July. And now I think the U.S. markets are going to start heading down by early September, probably peaking in the next week or two. So I think this is happening. And the other big factor is that, and I don't get why the oil markets don't totally get this, in the stock markets, oil keeps dropping.
You predicted 3 years ago that when we hit the cliff, oil would go to 40. Now it looks like it's worse than you say. Bloomberg's talking about $30 crude.
Yeah, I've been talking for years about 10 to 20 down the road. I think we're going to see $32 in the next few months. And what that says is, and again, the markets still don't fully get this because everybody's thinking oil's going to come back to 70, 80. The fracking industry, a $1 trillion industry that's created hundreds of thousands of jobs, directly and indirectly, $600 billion in junk bonds and highly leveraged debt. This industry is going to be dead. It's a bubble industry. It's a high
The
cost
debts, because I know, because a lot of folks in Texas are involved, the debts are all coming due. By next year, it's all bankrupt. Could that be the detonator in the U.S. sector?
Yes, exactly. I think China is the detonator for the global markets in the world because it's the biggest bubble, and it's kind of like Japan in the early 90s cracking. But for the United States, I think the first debt bubble to crack will be these frackers. And when they start defaulting, junk bond rates will go up for other high risk borrowers. And then you get a whole thing like the subprime crisis in 2008. There was only 4 states that had a big subprime problem and underwater households, and it triggered a global downturn. That's what
Wow.
happens. You're too much in debt. All it takes is a trigger. It's not that the subprime crisis was the biggest trend. It's that the whole world was too much in debt. Demographics were starting to decline, as we predicted for years. And this whole thing has only been kept together since 2008, when it started to crash last time, by endless money printing.
Sure, sure. I mean, you've documented the problem. You've been 100% dead on. It's frightening. What happens next now that you're closer? You said till we got real close, you couldn't, break down with the trends exactly how it might unravel. Are you close enough now to tell us? You say within weeks. I mean, how bad? How does it cascade? Is it a big bust or is it an unraveling? What do you see happening?
Well, first of all, our overall picture has been that, we've seen higher highs in every boom and bubble, again in 2000, and then again in 2007, and then 2015 now. Every crash has taken us to lower lows. We're seeing that we're going to go from a Dow recently of 18,300. We might get a little higher than that, I doubt it, but down to 5,500 to 6,000. That's a bigger crash than we had last time, the largest crash since the Great Depression in 29 to 32. So, but that's going to take a couple years. What I've been warning investors, especially in the last several months, when you have a bubble like this, you can't wait to prove that it's over and then get out, because the first downturn is typically 30 to 40%. That just happened in China, 35% down in a little over 3 weeks. In the 2000 tech crash, the first downturn in 2.5 months, 40%. In the 1929 bubble burst in the United States, 40% down in the first downturn. So you have to get out ahead of this. I think we just bounced off of this Chinese devaluation move, another desperate move to save a failing economy. And I think we'll bounce for a week or two, and then the Chinese market will turn back down and start collapsing. Oil prices will bounce from 42 here, which is something I predicted just weeks ago.
So we are in the dead cat bounce right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get a little dead cat bounce in stocks. Actually, stocks may hit a new high slightly. Oil will bounce from 42 to, I don't know, 48 or 50. And then next thing you know, it'll be at 32 bucks. When it hits $32 for the second time since 2008 in that massive crash, stock market's going to finally realize, in the junk bond market that finances these risky companies, that the frackers are dead. They're over. They run out their wells at low cost once they develop them, and they don't ever build any new wells again. And $1 trillion industry dies and starts to default. So that, again, is the biggest trigger in the United States, I see.
Wow. And then we've got all these other economic things happening. You talked about Europe. You talked about the EU. You talked about Greece defaulting. Looking at Europe, how does that play into all this? Then we've got Obamacare hitting. That's like a wet blanket on the economy. We've got Obama taxes just wrecking everything. I mean, it looks like Washington is trying to put the country into a cardiac arrest.
Well, again, what governments are really doing, they created this bubble in the first place. They overstimulated. They pushed interest rates artificially low. And then when the whole thing started unraveling in 2008, they started printing money out of nowhere. Like $10 trillion around the world, $4 trillion just in the United States, just to keep the economy from collapsing and the banking system from collapsing. But they created the bubble in the first place. So they're just covering up is what they're doing. And you can see China's situation keeps getting worse. They do X, then they do Y, then they do Z, but then they have to do another thing. It's because they're failing. You cannot keep a bubble going forever.
Sure.
And China is the largest in history, but Europe has its bubble, and they keep trying to stimulate. The U.S. has our bubble. We keep trying to stimulate. This thing's going to come apart. I think, Alex, when I look at history, when you do have major crashes, it is September and early to mid-October when the first crashes usually hit the hardest and strongest. So I'm telling people this market may have a week or two left. I would not be in stock after August 25th.
Okay, when we come back, I want to get your view on, and I know you've predicted with incredible accuracy. You don't like to get down into little micro stuff because it's impossible, but in your gut, what you expect this fall to be like, what you expect Christmas to be like. You know, elites separately, I know, are moving to like countryside redoubts. They're acting scared. And I've seen this building for years. They all know, like you said, they've been covering it up. I mean, they know what's going on. They just won't tell people. And then what's going to happen when the bottom falls out, geopolitically, but also domestically with the unrest? I know you've got charts on that at harrydent.com. Folks, this is invaluable information. We wish it wasn't true, but isn't it good to know a hurricane's coming and to have radar? In the old days, they didn't know. So it's positive that we're telling you a Category 5 hurricane is coming in. This is a short segment. There will be a long segment, obviously, 18-minute segment coming up next. We'll take some calls then. If you're watching us via TV, it's a free feed. If you're a radio listener, it adds depth and documentation to things. I'm not just saying, you know, there's photos, the Queen of England heiling Hitler. We can actually show it to you, or we can actually show you the chart on the yuan or show you the chart on their stock market. We can show you Mr. Dent's chart. The $100 trillion in financial assets could disappear. We're going to put that on screen, Infowars.com/show. If you want to see the free feed, share it with friends and family. Another chart, S&P 500, and some of those other numbers. And then the next segment, it's longer, we'll get into what he thinks is going to happen next, how this, he says within 2 weeks it could start. What does the start of that look like? But getting into your $100 trillion in financial assets could disappear. Let's talk about that chart.
Yeah, you know, people don't, I always talk about deflation coming out of endless money printing, and people go, what? They're printing money. That should cause inflation. They're only printing money rapidly, desperately to fight deflation. Deflation happens in history every single time that you have a credit bubble that creates way too much debt. Debt grew 2.6 times the U.S. economy from 1983 to 2008 and then started to collapse. That debt causes financial asset bubbles in stocks and real estate and commodities and all these sort of things. And when those debt bubbles deleverage, when those financial assets, and again, what this chart shows is that globally, the best estimate today, $231 trillion in financial assets. These are stocks, bonds, and loans. It doesn't even count real estate, which is huge. And I'm saying that in the Great Depression and times like this of deleveraging, those financial assets, loans fail, bonds go down in value, but especially stocks, that money gets wiped out. It disappears. And it took 24 years for stocks to get back to their highs in 1929. In real estate, 10 years to get back to their highs. So this money disappears. And when there's less money in the economy, you get deflation. There's less money chasing the same assets. It's a reset, and it's an important reset. It's good. It's good that if homes cost less. It's good that if mortgage rates are less. It's good that if public education and college education costs less because we get a reset in all these crazy...
Sure, but they don't let us have real resets. They're going to come in with bailout packages that only help the insiders. So that's a good question. What do you expect them to respond to this with, looking at what China's done, adding a chainsaw to their juggling act now?
Well, yeah, China's done it. China keeps responding with more stimulus measures, more fight the bubble bursting. The U.S. has been doing this in Europe since 2008. Everything governments have done around the world have been to fight this bubble from bursting. Nobody's written down hardly any loans. What you have to do when a bank or banks or financial institutions lend too much money to bad creditors, that they should have to write those loans down and take losses, and their shareholders should have to take those losses. Nobody's allowing that to happen. Instead, the everyday person is paying for this with declining wages, and the rich are making more money than ever because money is free. They've had to make money free to stop this crisis. Zero short-term interest rates, zero...
And they get first access to it and then loan it out.
Yeah, and well, actually, what happens is these financial institutions, the way they're surviving, they're not lending money to small
They're
businesses
hoarding
and
it.
everyday people. They are speculating in markets that are rigged to go up by the government.
Sure.
Look at the stock market. Our second chart shows that the S&P 500 since 2011 has gone straight up with only a 10% range of volatility because the government just says we're going to keep pumping money in the markets, we're going
Sure.
to keep interest rates at zero.
And now banks charge you to keep money with them because they've got so much free money. It's crazy.
But the free money causes these financial assets like stocks to go up. Half of the gains have been because companies are buying back their own stocks with free money. They're buying back their own stocks and making their earnings go up per share, even though they're not growing. It's crazy.
Well, let's talk about then what that will do when they rush in and try to prop up the market like the Chinese did, what you expect, how long they can prop it up, or will it fail like China just failed? I mean, China has failed, and now they're dropping their currency, which hurts the rest of the global economy. I mean, it is amazing. Stay with us. Mr. Dent's our guest. Luke, Chris, Adam, Austin, Dion, and others. Your calls are coming up here in a few minutes for Mr. Dent. You can go to his website, harrydent.com, and find free chapters of his book, find specials on the demographic cliff, read articles, and a lot more. Be sure and take advantage of that. Quite frankly, you're crazy if you don't. harrydent.com. We're going to go back to him in just a moment. I want to talk about my philosophy here just briefly. Most longtime listeners know it, but new ones may not. We're sponsor supported, maybe 30%. I used to be 100% sponsor supported, but I got to mess with it. I got to vet it. Sponsors can come and go. I began making documentary films 20-something years ago because I wanted to tell the truth about what was happening in the world. That helped finance the launch of the syndication of my radio show and the news sites and the rest of it. And I learned to just, hey, if I'm using something, if I like something, become a distributor of it. The highest quality water filtration systems that cut out glyphosates, fluoride, hundreds of other chemicals. I don't want to get bladder cancer. And I can reduce that by not getting all the additives that are in the water and the runoff. So we sell the ProPure G2.0 entire family of filters at the lowest price out there. We're the biggest seller of them in the world because I have special contracts to be able to sell it at the lowest price anywhere. And then I go further, 10% off, promo code WATER. So I'm an old-fashioned capitalist, and I sell the things that are the best that I use. We have a whole seed bank area for your summer garden, your fall garden, non-GMO, heirloom, super high quality. It's fun to have a garden. It's inexpensive. The kids love it. Plus, things are getting serious. It's good to have one of these to plant now and later. We have the widest selection out there from, 14 different companies, and the lowest price from all these people you're going to find. InfoWarsStore.com. When it comes to the nutraceuticals, I've got a lot of great nutraceutical sponsors like Longevity, InfoWarsHealth.com, great products. And when you buy at InfoWarsHealth.com, you can get free shipping when you sign up for auto ship or become distributor for $10. Get 30% off your first order, InfoWarsHealth.com. But I launched 3 years ago InfoWarsLife.com, first with one product. Now we've got 16 products. To go out and have game changers at InfoWarsLife.com, some things that are hiding in plain view, some things that are prescription in Europe, all of it really, really, for myself and others, you've heard the rave reviews, works. And with third-party review sites, we have the highest reviews of anyone out there. And even the herbal nuts, the herbal snobs are salivating over these products. That's why so many of them are sold out. We're trying to get a bunch of them in right now. And then sourcing it because it's non-GMO, concentrated, high quality, triple tested, to not have any toxins or heavy metals or adulterations. It's really the Rolls-Royce or Bentley of products, the Ferrari of products at a Ford F-150 price. And when you purchase at InfoWarsLife.com, it funds our operation. After being sold out for weeks, Supermel Vitality is back in stock at InfoWarsLife.com. We're now taking orders on this emergency shipment we had made as quickly as possible. It's the new and improved, higher concentrated, even stronger formula. It has hundreds of 5-star reviews, is our best-selling formula for a reason. And you can read the reviews, again, right there on the site. Here's one from Climber in Gilbert, Arizona. I'm a cyclist. Supermel Vitality has improved my overall performance and average speed. Here's another one. One Please customer, Redding, California. I was introduced to this product by my son. We own and operate a family-run business that requires a lot of attention, both physically and mentally, that can take quite a toll on a guy. Since we have both been using Supermel Vitality, there is a marked improvement in not only our work and professional day-to-day performance, but the after-hours family time is where the big man comes in. That's I wonder what he's talking about there. Thank you for the high-quality product. Well, thank you for your support. Plus, even if I was a sociopath, which I'm not, if I sell super high-quality stuff, competitively priced, I'm going to become popular in the market and be successful. And it's that idea we've gotten away from. So thank you all for your support. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. Over 500 products at InfoWarsStore.com. InfoWarsLife.com is just a subsection of that online shopping center. But it's all about free will. We don't take a gun, put it to your head, and take money for banker bailouts. We don't take money and give it to NPR or MSNBC and stimulus money to give Rachel Maddow, you know, a raise so she can interview Michael Moore. We're just here saying we got great products. If you believe in what we're doing, buy them. And then we're a platform to have people like Mr. Dent on and others. Now, I'm ranting. I want to go to phone calls. I want to go back to our guest. Harry, you're a gentleman. You don't like to pitch your stuff. But let me tell you, out of all the great guests we have on, and they've got really good track records of being accurate. They say a lot of the same stuff you say, but you say it with research, precision, and frightening accuracy. Put a plug in for your book at harrydent.com, The Demographic Cliff.
Yeah, again, this book came out a few years ago. We're offering it for free. All you pay is shipping and handling, and this is the real shipping and handling, not on the 1995 commercials where you pay more than it's cost. Just $4.95. Again, if you like what you're hearing here, we have a full analysis of the global economy, of debt around the world, of demographics around the world. And demographics are so important, and economists are so clueless about it. And we even show why real estate will never be the same. People just don't get that real estate went up in our lifetime because the first middle-class generation came out of World War II and bought homes massively for the first time.
Sure, and I hate to interrupt you, but you predicted that would be the final trigger, would be a Chinese housing crash. Here it is in the Financial Times of London 2 days ago. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, even when we do see this global crash in real estate, it's not going to come roaring back. Maybe in India, but not in the United States or China or many places like it did in the past. So, we help people see what you need to do now to protect your money from a big crash. But where do you invest when we do see this crash? And there's a lot of areas, but housing is one of them that's not going to be the place to make big gains. And surprisingly, gold, after doing so poorly for years and will do much more poorly ahead, gold and commodities could be a great investment. But emerging countries are going to be the future demographically around the world. So we give people a whole picture in this book, and you can get it for free.
Well, people should go get the book. I've read the book a while back, and it's just you can't argue with it. And now we're hitting that wall. Let me ask you this question. And I asked it earlier, but I want to talk about it a few minutes and go to some phone calls here. Specifically, zeroing in on what you think is going to start happening in 2 weeks, and then what some of the other triggers could be and how this could look. Because major university studies estimate 7 million people died during the 10-year Great Depression from association of malnutrition and diseases from the collapse. And we had 90% of people being rural, most of them self-sufficient. And we had 7 million people starve to death or die as complications from malnutrition. Now, if things go belly up, and we got a lot of hardworking Americans, but we got a lot of spoiled brats, too. And this whole entitlement society and Hollywood pushing, gangster culture and all the rest of it. I mean, I look around me, and it scares the daylights out of me to think about what a hardcore depression will look like in this country.
Yeah, I mean, there's more political polarization than I've ever seen in U.S. history. There's more extreme inequality than we've seen since the late 1920s. This cannot end well. A lot of people are going to blame each other when this happens, and nobody's going to be totally true about that, but they're going to blame each other, and people are not going to be happy. And I tell you, if you think it's going to be bad here, don't even imagine being in China when the biggest urban migration in history falls apart. And these people can't even go back to their rice paddies because they've been paved over with empty condominiums. It just, so I think people like really need to hunker down and say, look, I mean, and I don't even know how bad this can get on the civil level. I just see that it's not just going to be a financial collapse. There are going to be civil problems, and you need to live in a safe place. You need to protect yourself in just very basic ways, not just your investments. And just say, how can I be as safe as possible if the world kind of melts down? And it doesn't melt down forever. I'm not a doom and gloomer. I've been bullish most of my life, but I am a doom and gloomer now because all the fundamental trends point down. And it worries me the most, Alex, that governments have fought this so hard. Governments have never fought a downturn and a reset in financial assets and debt so hard. You have to let a lot of this debt go. It's like a financial detox, you know, just like people would do on diet or something if they want to get healthier, if they had cancer or something. We need this, and they just won't let it happen. So when it does happen, it's going to be worse than it would have been. So I say protect yourself and say, where do I live? How liquid are my financial assets? How flexible am I? That's the way to survive this. And then when things fall apart, it's going to be like Joseph Kennedy in the early 30s, where you're buying stuff for 10, 20 cents on the dollar.
That's right. Boy, I tell you, what are all the pundits and people that sold all these ideas, what are they going to do? Just hope the public has the attention span of a goldfish?
Well, again, you know, I listen to all the great experts and the hedge fund managers, and I hate to say it, Warren Buffett, nice, decent guy, great investor. He doesn't have a clue of what's going on in the economy. He's been a cheerleader for the government. All these other financial experts and Wall Street, they're all want to keep the bubble going because they all benefit. When this thing bursts, they're going to get hit the worst. The richest people in the world are going to get hit the worst, except for the smartest ones to get out of the way, because they own the most financial assets. These financial institutions who are levered up unbelievably and now are speculators instead of lenders or investment bankers, which is even worse, they're going to get hit horribly. So again, I just tell people, there's nothing you can do about this. There's nothing I can do about this. All we can do is get out of the way.
Absolutely, and I meant to say earlier, like with the supplements and stuff, our greatest asset is our health and our security and our safety. And it just comes down to that, folks. You got to take care of what you can take care of, and the rest is we tried to stop all this. And whether it's this year or whenever, I don't see how long they can hold this off. And the elites, I know, are scurrying to the hills. I want to go to some phone calls with Mr. Dent here. Again, you're listening to the Alex Jones Show on stations across the country. Please support these local affiliates, folks. Let's go ahead and talk to Austin in Florida. I thought Austin was in Texas, but another lame joke. Austin, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is, when the financial collapse does happen, let's say in, I don't know, this winter, let's just say, how will this affect the U.S. geopolitically? Will this cause a war with Russia or World War III? And will American people buy into it as well?
Sure, here's a question. What do you expect to do to the dollar? Because if other countries are collapsing worse, would the dollar go up? I mean, I don't think anybody really knows for sure, but what's your gut tell you, Mr. Dent?
Well, I do know for sure on this one. In the last crisis, when things really went down and Lehman Brothers went down and we had a financial crisis, the U.S. dollar went up 27% in a matter of months. Oil collapsed, gold collapsed, silver went running to mommy, real estate went down, stocks around the world went down. The dollar is the safe haven, not because we're doing the right things, but we're the best house in a bad neighborhood. Europe is stimulating much more than we are now. Japan is stimulating 3 times as much as us. They are in much worse shape when this thing boils down. And when the global economy goes down, a lot of these financial assets are priced in U.S. dollars. And when these U.S. dollars get destroyed, guess what? The U.S. dollar goes up in value because there's fewer of them, and it's going to buy more. We have 23 aircraft carriers. The next largest country has 1 or 2. France has the SS Croissant, as you know. I mean, there's nobody else to run to except
What happens to interest rates?
Hmm?
What do you see interest rates doing in the next 6 months?
Okay. They may go up at first for Treasury bonds when people worry about another downturn and higher deficits, but ultimately the Treasury bonds will go down even further with deflation in prices. But junk bonds, higher risk bonds, will go up astronomically. And junk bonds are like stocks. We told people 2 years ago to sell the junk bond indexes and junk bonds because a higher risk economy will create greater defaults. But for Treasury bonds in the strongest countries like Germany or the United States, they will tend to hold their value and increase over time. In the Great Depression, the only sector of investments other than cash that had higher value were the Treasury bonds and the highest quality AAA corporate bonds, stocks.
Sure. Well, I think the best thing to do is just be in cash, so when everything bottoms out, like you said, you can do a Joe Kennedy. I want to go to calls here, but a lot of them are asking the same thing. Luke and Adam and others, we're going to go to them, and we'll get your answer. But here's the headline in the Telegraph: Europe in crisis. Everyone from Putin to ordinary savers is stockpiling gold. If commodities are going to go down, we've seen gold go up a little bit the last few days. Why would they be stockpiling? I think it's because it is a good emergency backup if governments start confiscating cash. But they could do that to gold, too. We'll get Dent's take on that. Luke in Arizona, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. I had a statement and then I wanted to ask a question.
You bet. We're not screening your call. You're on air. Go ahead.
Thank you. First, there are right now bullion checking accounts available to Americans. I have one. I use Silver all the time. It's a debit card that works on the Visa network. And especially listening to the guest today, I'm going to be out of dollars, coming the 25th. I don't want to be anywhere near this system. I guess my question for Mr. Dent was, do you think that China's, play, I guess you could say the managed crash of their system, do you think they're doing this basically to cause a ripple so that when everything kind of crashes and falls out and everybody has to kind of look at, what hard assets does their government have, sovereign debt-wise, that they can back up with, that their paltry 1,600 ounces of gold is actually going to look pretty good when everybody else is kind of demanding their gold back from depositories, especially from America, and we're not even giving Germany their gold back yet.
Okay, Luke, I hear you. You think gold's going to go up. You're promoting a scarcity of gold, which I've said I think it'll go up as things get worse. Other commodities will go down. Just in my gut, we see that happening. Dent disagrees with that, and I'm not saying I'm right. I hold some gold just as a total emergency backup as a form of cash. What do you say to what Luke just said? Thank you, Luke.
Well, in the last crisis, gold went up in the first several months. Stocks peaked in October 2007. Gold peaked in I think like June or something, and then went down when the crisis hit. So I think the same thing could happen this time. In the early stages, gold could go up. Gold is way oversold right now. If anything, I mean, I'd rather own gold right now short-term than stocks. I think stocks are about to crash. Gold could go up. But when we see deflation, gold is going to go down again like it did last time. So I am not a fan of gold longer term. Short term, I am somewhat.
But super long term, you think it's the ultimate winner, right?
Oh, well, yeah. 2040, I think gold could hit $5,000 an ounce with the next commodity bubble that's going to be driven by the growth of emerging countries. And guess who consumes the most gold in the world as consumers? Indians and Chinese. Off the charts. But we're in a commodity downturn, and I was the first to forecast this several years ago. Commodities are going to be down for years, and gold goes up and down with the commodity index since it stopped becoming a monetary metal in the early 70s with Nixon and stuff. So people got to get over this. Gold's the ultimate.
Sure.
Money.
What if the globalists out of this world crisis bring in the SDR and try to back it with a currency basket and a commodities basket made up of silver and gold? I mean, they're kicking that around.
But you can't do it. All of the gold in the world would fit in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. You cannot back today's modern, information-intensive service economy with gold like you could in the Roman Empire or even the 1800s when we were still mostly farmers. Gold is a standard. It was a good standard We need a standard. Gold cannot and will not, and I will predict this until I die,
Sure.
will not be the standard.
Well, what's the standard going to be then? Energy?
No, you're going to have standards where governments make agreements among each other that you can't push down your currency artificially.
So you're talking about go back to a new Bretton Woods.
And you cannot let debt grow more than X% of the economy. It's just a simple, it'd be a quantitative standard, but you can't back today's economy with a commodity like gold.
So you're talking about a monetary treaty.
Well, I mean, why would we want to back it with gold if there was a strike in South Africa and gold would be cut back and the whole world would collapse? It's crazy.
No, I mean, I get what you're saying. I was asking the question. You know, it's being bandied about by some of the top policymakers as a new currency, a new bubble.
Okay. Ultimately, a basket of currencies could be better. But if I'm right, and then what happened in 2008 occurs again, and the U.S. dollar rises and almost every other major currency falls, who's going to want a basket of falling currencies? The U.S. dollar, I think, for the next 2 to 3 years is safe as the reserve currency. After that, we do need a better monetary system. And I've told people, when I retire and have a little extra time, I'm going to figure a way to have a better global monetary system, because even these floating exchange rates, where a company in the United States would be competitive one day and then not because the dollar rose in value. That's
it's perfect
crazy.
for speculators. We're building the whole planet for speculators. Dion in Illinois, you're on the air with Mr. Dent.
Yeah, Harry, I don't know which jobs are going to be wiped out by the collapse, and which jobs you think will be in demand, and what's going to happen to the people that are out of the labor market. Thank you.
You talking about stocks? Or
No, he was talking about what jobs are secure and which jobs aren't.
Well, the jobs that are going to do the best are the ones that are being demanded by the aging baby boomers. Jobs in healthcare, jobs in travel, cruise ships, things like that. Even eating out is probably peaking now. Auto sales are going to peak this year and drop off like housing did many years before. Demographics will tell you what's going to do well. And the economy will hurt almost all industries to some degree. But I tell you, healthcare, things that serve older people, maintenance services for houses. I tell you, in Japan, it's doing well? Convenience stores and pharmacies. That's what's doing the best.
Well, you can see that. They're building a Walgreens or CVS on every corner. It's going to be robots, servicing robots.
Robotics, exactly. How do you replace young people and workers you can't afford when old people need more service?
It's just going to be unbelievable. Well, one thing's for sure, it's not going to be boring into the future. Let's go to Adam. Adam, you're on the air from Ohio. Go ahead.
Oh, man, I can't even believe I made it through.
You're on the air. Welcome. Go ahead.
Pretty much my question was answered just listening to both of you gentlemen talk. And first of all, Alex, I want to say that how much I appreciate all that you do. Endgame was a fantastic documentary.
Thank you.
And I do apologize. I am a little nervous right now.
Well, I'm nervous, too, about what's happening, brother. Go ahead. You got a question for Mr. Dent?
Well, it's more of a comment now. I just want to remind people to get involved in their church, get involved in their family, and just keep the good fight. I know it looks bad, but it can always be better.
Well, Adam, God bless you. And I'm really glad Adam raises that, because there's financial wealth, but we could recreate it overnight if we have cultural wealth of free market liberty, merit-based economies, transparency, and have our health and have our friends and family. That's the real wealth. Having a garden's the real wealth. Having children's the real wealth. And I think we're going to see a major renaissance in people getting back to basics during this global depression. What do you think, Harry? Do you think that there's going to be some good come out of this?
Yeah, I mean, Alex, I study cycles. I was a cycle guy way before I was a demographic guy. I just stumbled on demographics as the most important cycle in this new middle-class world, increasingly in the emerging world. But to me, one of the cycles I look at that is very, very clear, every 250 years, we have a cultural, political, social revolution like democracy in the late 1700s.
And it's set to hit in 8 years, isn't it?
Yeah. And so that's the next decade is going to see a major revolution that is going to be powerful for emerging countries and is going to restructure developed countries around the values we need. So I think that's going to be the most positive thing that comes out of this crisis. People don't get clear, don't make clear decisions, don't go into the burning barn and save the horse and the dog and the kid and the baby until there's a crisis. And when there's a crisis like 9/11, people just get incredibly clear and intelligent. So I think this crisis is going to bring a big revolution. We've been destroying the free market capitalist system that's made us so prosperous, especially over the last 3 decades. And we're going to learn how to bring it back with greater wisdom. And I think that's going to be the payoff.
All right. Well, the book is free. I know about shipping. After you pay people to ship it and even ship it media mail, I think you're losing money at $4.95.
I'm losing money on the book. We're breaking even on the shipping. But again, harrydent.com. This is the time to get a book like this.
Yeah, and you've been a many times New York Times bestseller. I guess you just want to get this out to people. Well, look, I appreciate you. We look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. Sorry the other callers, but we're out of time. And again, anytime you've got something breaking and just want to pop in for 10 minutes, don't just wait for us to call. We appreciate you coming on. But we really, as this unfolds, want to have you back a lot more. So thank you for the time, sir.
Okay.
All right, harrydent.com. That's it for the transmission. Nightly news tonight, 7 o'clock Central, prisonplanet.tv. Tell your friends and family to tune in. That's our greatest power is you, the listeners. Tell people to tune in. Infowars.com/show. The knowledge of the ancients, tried and true, trusted herbs and extracts fused with the latest nutraceutical science. Introducing the all-new Ancient Defense Herbal Immunity Blend, crafted with over 14 key ancient herbs and extracts to supercharge and prepare your body for what experts admit is the most dangerous season of the year. We have rejected hundreds of other formulations in our quest to bring you what is simply the most powerful and comprehensive proprietary formula that we have ever created in the realm of herbal immunity. For the last 2 years, our team has been working with top doctors, nutritionists, and chemists to develop the ultimate nutraceutical formulation. Experience the benefits of combining over 14 ancient herbs and extracts with exciting new advances in nutraceutical science. For a limited time, get 25% off on this introductory offer. Visit ancientdefense.com or call 888-253-3139. ancientdefense.com.
That, too many people keep the water stirred up. And when the water is stirred up and muddy and confusing, the people listening to the media or watching reading the things in the paper is they cannot make logical decisions. And so people, like you say, they don't know what's going on because they're all stirred up all the time, making these really stupid remarks about, this and that and racism and guns, and it's just goofy. And we're in a bad situation right now.
Well, the political elite have obviously fostered this because, as you said, the fog of war, it confuses us, it confounds us. But won't it end up making the country really have problems if they've got school kids obsessing and crying over brown paper bags, while meanwhile Obama is butchering the Bill of Rights and Constitution along with the Republicans?
That's what I think. My rant, for those of you who read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my whole rant for the last 20 years has been, why don't we have financial education in our schools? Why are they talking about brown bags and fried chicken and watermelon? And when you look at, and I'm not Republican or Democrat, so I don't have a dog in that fight.
Same here.
But when you have a president who comes from Hawaii like I do, and he went to one of the richest schools in Hawaii, but the guy knows nothing about money. And when you have a guy who knows nothing about money, but actually comes from a poor background, that poor background is going to affect their view on people who make money, people who are rich. And I think really that's the biggest problem, because from President of the United States down, senators and congressmen, military officers and all that, millions of people today who work for the government now expect the government to take care of them. Detroit went bankrupt because they couldn't pay for pensions. And why is that? Why is Obama going to make more money after he's president than when he did when he was working? Why are senators and congressmen paid exorbitant pensions when they only work for one term? At the same time, you have millions of poor people or people who are struggling, people who own businesses who may never be able to retire. And that's a crime. And that's why I say, why isn't there financial education in our schools?
That's right. They have demonized making money, saving money, how to build a business. They've just taught us, go work for the big corporation in a drone facility, and they've created all this class warfare. Obama lands in a giant jet with 14 other support aircraft and over 200 Secret Service, and then tells Nigerians you shouldn't have air conditioning or a car. He doesn't say we should have cleaner cars or cleaner air conditioning and innovate new sciences, and that Africa, could innovate and lead the world if they had that idea. No, he just says you're going to stay in mud huts. How's that sound? When he is there basically delivered by a high-tech flying carpet.
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't remember, but I was a pilot. I flew for the Marine Corps in Vietnam. And I know how much it costs to run a plane. I remember when Clinton was running for office, he actually parked a 747 and left it running so somebody could give him a $200 haircut.
No, I remember that. And people were outraged back then.
Yeah.
Is there outrage fatigue now? Because stuff is getting more and more over the top. Or where do you, and I'm going to skip this network break because I want to give our guest more time. Robert Kiyosaki, best-selling author of all time for self-help finance book, is our guest. Got a new book out. We're going to talk about that book. But, I mean, the world is just crazy at this point. Give us your prognosis for the planet. There's obviously opportunities for those of us that are studying it. I mean, I'm going to do better probably than ever as things get worse. But I'm not happy about that because I know it's hurting the average person.
Amen. Alex, I would say exactly the same thing. It doesn't make me happy that I'm getting richer and richer, and I see my friends getting poorer and poorer. I'm very concerned right now about, my generation, the baby boom generation, the biggest generation in history. And they bought that program of put all your money in a 401k and invest for the long term. Now, I wrote a book called Rich Dad's Prophecy back in 2002. That was 14 years ago, or 13 years ago. And I said the biggest stock market crash in the history of the world was coming in 2016. I was kind of guessing. But unfortunately, I didn't write it to be right. I wrote it out of concern. If I'm correct that in 2002, when I said the biggest market crash was coming in 2016, that means millions and millions of baby boomers, their kids, their grandkids, will feel the effect of that when their retirement savings are wiped out. I hope I'm wrong, but so far, my numbers look accurate and it's holding course right now. So I don't write because I want to be rich or poke fun or be righteous. I am really concerned about my fellow citizens.
It's frustrating because when you know how this stuff really works, you can position yourself and do well. And then just the average person, even if they seem smart or a friend, they just keep doing what CNBC and CNN say. Not even that those places have big audiences anymore, but still it's the authority. But with Brian Williams' fall, I think that's one of the big dominoes to go down with a loss of confidence in the system. What's your take on the future of the media?
Well, I think it's manipulated. You and I are on the same boat again. It's not free media, it's controlled media. If you have money, you control the media. If you don't have media, you don't have that money, you don't control it. When Rich Dad Poor Dad came out in 1997, and I started saying your house is not an asset, I was foretelling the crash coming in 2007.
Yeah, we should talk about your predictions. Rattle off some of those. They're amazing, and they're on record.
Well, there was three. One was that savers would be losers, and that was in 1997. And in 2007, when the markets crashed and the Fed began printing money, as you know, savers are losers. I also said your house is not an asset, and your house is the biggest asset for many of the middle class. And as you know, the real estate market has not yet recovered. Excuse me. And then I predicted in 2002 a massive crash would come prior to 2016.
You did.
And it came in 2007. And now this is the other side of the coin. I always talk about all coins have three sides: heads, tails, and the edge. You have Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other side, capitalists on one side, socialists on the other side. But our job as private citizens is to be on the edge looking at both sides.
That's right.
Fortunately, when the market crashed in 2007, the poor and middle class got wiped out, but the rich got richer. And one of the ways the rich got richer is the very banks that put out all this quantitative easing were offering guys like me literally hundreds of millions of dollars to buy the very real estate that was wiped out. And so what I write about and I talk about is that the rich are richer because they're on the other side of the coin. They don't go to school to get a job. They go to school to learn to be rich, how to start corporations.
And let's go above you at the level of actually building things in a good, corporate businessman, true capitalist. And above that is the real enemy, the crony capitalist. You're just piggybacking on them looking at both sides of the coin. Good businessmen, bad businessmen, you can do it. I can do it. We've got to get the public to start actually getting outside the box, looking at the edge of the coin. The problem is they'll go above this. They'll finance Al-Qaeda. Doesn't mean they run them. They'll finance ISIS and then make hundreds of billions off fighting them. And the public goes, what, you say we command them? No, but we helped get them going. And then they'll use them by, again, gaming the dialectic to get more power. How do you get the public to think like an executive? I just, some people tell me either someone's got it or they don't, Robert.
Well, let me give you, I always write about three sides of a coin, heads, tails, and the edge. I was a Marine in Vietnam, and in 1972, I was standing out there. And you may recall in 71, Nixon took us off the gold standard.
Yes.
And I was standing out there going, what the heck does this mean? So I wrote about that event in a book called Conspiracy of the Rich. Is when I was like 25 years old, I'm talking to this Vietnamese fruit seller, and she wouldn't take a $50 bill. And so here I'm 25, 26 years old going, what's going on? And she didn't want the dollar. She wanted gold. And so that's when I went, oh, my God. Plus, Vietnam was kind of a wake-up call for me because I realized we, the public, are lied to by those who control the military-industrial complex. Now, I'm not against war or pro-war. I don't like being lied to.
You're against the special interest being above the law.
Yeah. And so when the market started coming down, again, I say that the other side of the coin. I didn't want to be on the side that was losing. I want to be on the side that's winning. But as you know, the media controls the message. And so it keeps the poor and middle class interpolated, always upset, discussing things that really don't matter, like brown bag lunches with chicken in it.
Exactly, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Don't have a brown bag and don't bring chicken to fried. It's racist. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. And that's what we are. Or, when I had this person apply for the job the other day, and she was like really stopped from school. She did nothing. I was going, she had no idea. She was applying for a job, but she had no idea what my company did. She just wanted a job and wanted to know how much it was going to pay her.
Yeah, if I wanted a job, I'd research everything about you. I'd come in saying, I want to help you. This is what I can offer. I'd like to advance in your company. I'd like to prove myself. I really like your philosophy, Mr. Kiyosaki. No, they just show up and go, yeah, you're lucky if you get me. It's just amazing.
Worse than that, Alex, I was afraid when the interview was over, I was going to get sued.
Wow.
That's how, what I mean? Because it'd be either sexual harassment or discrimination. As an employer, I'm terrified of what I even say to potential employees. That's how politically correct we are.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to tell a woman, oh, I think your blouse is nice. Oh, that's evil. That's horrible. Of course, that's a totally normal human activity, but it's evil.
And it wasn't nice, but I didn't say that.
But I mean, I don't want to say to even like an old lady, oh, I like your coat. I'll say, oh, I like your dog on the hike and bike trail because everything's politically incorrect now.
That's correct. And I think, what we're talking about without describing it is probably the problem. We're so stirred up all over the place, nobody's listening anymore. Everybody's talking, but nobody's listening. So I'm going, holy mackerel. This is not a good time to be.
Well, Robert, I want to give you the floor. We got 5 minutes till break. I've been asking some of the questions up front, but front and center, what is most important to you, good, bad, and ugly right now? And we're going to come back from break in about 5 minutes and get into your new book.
I'm just concerned about this possible. I hope it doesn't happen, but if my Rich Dad was correct, again, published in 2002, Rich Dad's Prophecy predicted the biggest crash in the history of the world was coming in 2016. And that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's why I speak. That's why I write. That's why I take on the media. But I'm very concerned for my citizens. Look, Alex, what happens if this, let's say I'm right, hopefully I'm not, and millions of baby boomers lose their pension, their homes, their jobs, they lose everything. What is a ripple effect throughout the world going to mean to that? What is it? We've never been here before. Never before has the U.S. dollar, one currency, been the reserve currency of the world, and we're printing it.
Wow.
The Europeans are printing, Japanese are printing, and you got to look at this and go, this is not good. So that's my concern right now.
Well, look, your prediction will come true, whether it's this year, next year, or 2 years down the road, or 3 years. Zimbabwe, Weimar, I mean, let's talk about that history. I mean, doesn't this always end in a serious collapse? I mean, it doesn't go anywhere else. I don't. My only concern is how big will it get before it implodes? I want to have a controlled crash landing.
Yes. The point here is the last 100 years has been 52 so-called currencies that collapsed, 52 in the last 100 years. But never, the reason 1972, me standing on the fields of Vietnam, was so important was that for the very first time in history, the U.S. dollar is the currency of the world. And if the dollar goes bad or something skews up, the whole world goes down. It's not like just Zimbabwe or the Weimar Republic. It's the whole world. It is the biggest collapse possible. And we have no financial education. We don't tell people this.
The biggest collapse possible, a global Weimar, what will that look like?
Alex, you know Harry Dent?
Yeah.
Yeah. After I talked to him yesterday, I was put on suicide watch. You know, I can't even fathom what it might be. I can't imagine it. Because I was in Zimbabwe in 2004 just to go see what a currency collapse looks like.
I knew that. I read an article that quoted you. Tell us about that.
Well, it was just extremely frightening. You know, what happens when your money is no good is the question. What happens when you can't trade? What happens if you can't buy food? You know, and people do goofy things. And in fact, you know, I was accosted by what they call the war vets, you know, these guys with AK-47s. And here I was out there going, you know, I'm not here to change your political views. I just want to find out what's going on. But they didn't care. They were afraid I was part of the CIA or something, which I'm not. But I'm going, hey, I'm just here to find out. But it was so tense. You know, there was a little woman, she was about probably 80 years old. The war vets went to her farm in Zimbabwe and kicked her off. And I saw this little lady, she comes up to me and she says, you know, they're just screaming at me in Afrikaans, which I don't speak. But it was just the futility. After 400 years, she and her husband lose the farm their parents gave to them. And I don't know if that's going to happen here, but it's frightening. The thing I did find out in Zimbabwe was what kind of triggered the collapse of Zimbabwe dollar was a thing called retirement pensions.
That's right.
And the U.S. is sitting in the same precarious position right now.
Wasn't it government pensions?
Any kind of pension.
Yeah.
With millions of people counting on the government pension to keep them alive when they retire. That's what I'm afraid of. That's why after talking to Harry Dent, I was depressed.
When we come back, we're going to get into your new book and other world events taking place. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is our guest. You go to his website. Ladies and gentlemen, it's got a lot of powerful information, richdad.com. And we got to get this guy back more often than every 4 years. I want to get him on every few months. And we'll also open the phones up. So stay with us. We'll be right back on the other side, 800-259-9231. It's teleprompter-free radio, TV. Robert Kiyosaki is our guest. RichDad.com, his new book, Second Chance for Your Money, Your Life, and Your World, and Our World. I am going to be listening very carefully to what he has to say. I remember back when his first big book, he'd had other books came out in the late 90s. My dad was like, you got to read this, you got to read this, you got to read this. And my dad's been pretty successful in business, smart guy. And so I read it. And it just like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I had kind of instinctively already agreed with so much of it, but I did learn a lot. But I tell you, I can't wait to read his new book. I've read 5 or 6 of his books, and they're excellent. I've tuned in when I get a chance online to his radio show. You can find that on his website as well, richdad.com. And the reason I have other talk show hosts on my show is I don't care. I hope Robert has 1 billion listeners. I'm not some egomaniac. I know he's not as well. George Norrie has me on. You know, he's got 16 million terrestrial listeners. I only have about 5-6 million terrestrial listeners. Altogether, about 20 million. online and YouTube and the rest of it. But he has me on because he wants to try to save the country and have a free system. I mean, we're all kind of in the same mindset here. We're fellow travelers, not in the socialist way, but in the opposite way, a true capitalist way. So we got to stick together. So if you want to defeat the globalists, get his book, read it, give it to others. If you want to defeat the crony monopoly capitalists that are discrediting capitalism, get his book. Listen, socialism, once it comes in, is so horrible, it always ends up getting reversed. So we've got a very good shot at beating this. The question is, can we beat it before we get really deep into it? And we're starting to get deep into it. So I hope you get his book. I hope you go to InfoWarsLife.com to get our great nutraceuticals, Survival Shield, Nascent Iodine X2. It's not like any other iodine out there. Consult your physician. It's true iodine. I don't call it nascent so much because the other nascent brands out there, we've had them looked at. They're not really nascent. This is pure iodine, 99999, just boom. I mean, it's not bound. It's not an alcohol. It's an organic palm oil. It's injected as a gas in a patented secret process that the Russians invented. It's life-changing. It's the good halogen. Goes in, just pulls the garbage out, supercharges the energy. You use super male or super female vitality that we have discounted the month of February with it, 20% off. It's just, I don't know, what is it, like 18, 19 different concentrated herbs. The women's has a couple extra. That's why I get confused on the numbers, that are just known to give you more vitality, energy in the gym, your libido. I mean, believe me, just try it. You'll be a repeat customer. And regardless, you're supporting the First Amendment and freedom and liberty and folks that promote the Second Amendment and sovereignty and family rights and property rights. So if the political class ever can be defeated, the insider political class, the crony class, it's when we, the people, start voting with our dollars consciously. And it's starting to happen with organic food, you name it. And that's why it is an absolute essential that you buy the T-shirts, you buy the books, you buy the films, and pass them on to others to wake them up, but also fund our operation. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. At the end of the day, money for me is about putting fuel in my truck so I can drive to the Grand Canyon and show my kids. It's not about I got money, look, I'm waving around some $100 bills. It's about I have freedom. And I try to use the money we've made to build a platform to promote your freedom. Because we're in this together. We all hang together or hang separate, as Benjamin Franklin said. This is a critical time of change. And the enemy's trying to take over in this point. We can seize this opportunity and really change things for the better. There are times in history when more happens in a decade than happened in the previous 100 years. We're setting our future destinies right now. Every major economist, philosopher, historian agrees. We're in a critical point right now, the beginning of it. The next 5 to 10 years. I want to see if Robert agrees with me, and then we're going to go to some phone calls, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. But it's so important now to tell friends and family about radio shows you like and pass it on. It's so important to promote other podcasts. It's so important to support our local affiliates and their sponsors. It's so important to buy the products because if we build it and you come, this will become the new pastime. If you want to expose an evil culture, become the new culture. Make art. Compete. Our ideas are like snow cones in hell, and they're selling flamethrowers in hell. People want to buy what we got, and we're selling freedom for free, but we need the platform to put it out. So go to InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com. Check out the over 800 products on the site now. Most of it we can get shortwave radios, T-shirts, you name it, made in America. Some of it's not at a lower price. We let you make the decision. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. Again, second chance for your money, for your life, and for our world is the new book. And he is joining us right now. It's 8 lessons in military leadership for entrepreneurs. I want you to talk about your book and any other issues you want to get to, and then I want to take a few phone calls, Robert.
Yeah, first of all, 8 Lessons of Military Leadership is a book coming out in a couple of months.
Well, I can't wait to read that one, too.
Yeah. And Second Chance is about where we are today, and people may need to change some of the things they're doing. If I could mention Second Chance, if I show it up to you, I love what you do because you give people like me, people with a different point of view, a chance to speak, versus what happens on television a lot of times. I'll put one person with one point of view, and a person from another point of view, and they yell at each other. And we learn nothing.
The plan is to teach us how to fight with each other and never actually come together.
Yeah. So I appreciate what you do, and I agree with you. You know, cash has only one thing: to put fuel in your tank, and to keep your business going, keep your programs going, and support, you know, people and messages you like. So I agree wholeheartedly with you. The reason I wrote Second Chance is because of all the confusion. So if I could be bold and show you a picture from the book here, what you'll see here are pictures. And although it's a very big book, the reason I made it in pictures is so that you didn't have to listen to the people yelling back and forth. Also, what happens for many people is when they read economic terms, they get confused. So Second Chance, part one especially, is everything's in pictures. So a 10-year-old kid could read it, an adult could read it, and the best thing about it is parent and adult, or old guys and young guys, could discuss the pictures rather than get confused about all the economic jargon that's thrown out there, like what is the GDP versus NDA and all this stuff. It's just pictures. So when you have with Second Chances about pictures, you can explain to your family, your kids, by pointing, because you know your kids will probably not read it, but they can see the pictures. And I think that's what makes the book differently. I'm not pushing an agenda. When you see, like I said, in 1971, 1972, when I was in Vietnam, you know, I went, oh my God, I better wake up. You know, something's happening here. And that's when Nixon took us off the gold standard. And if you know what happened, we started printing, and the biggest boom in history ever took off. We have never been this high, 17,000 Dow. Then in 1978, this is all in pictures in Second Chance. In 1978, the 401k came out. And basically what that was, the 401k was, the big corporations were saying to the little employees, hey, you're on your own, dude. You know, if you run out of money when you retire, it's no longer our problem. So when you see the 401k from that perspective, like it's the other side of the coin, and you look at the pictures, then you can start making different decisions for you, your family, and your life.
What do you make by the big banking cartels worldwide, and now they're floating it here at the State of the Union, the government, quote, taking over private 401ks and education 401ks to, quote, protect them, but throwing in class envy that these are, you know, lazy trust fund kids when the average thing's like $25,000. I mean, that's really scary when they start sniffing around the pension funds, the private pension funds. I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
And healthcare.
Yeah.
The whole thing. You talked about socialism versus capitalism. You know, I was a Marine. I fought for capitalism. I didn't fight for socialism. You know, when people say, what happened to the American dream? The American dream has gone to the entitlement mentality. And I look at all our senators and congressmen and presidents. They all expect the government to take care of them. And what's going to happen, if I'm correct, in 2016, and the whole stock market house of cards comes down, that means everybody who's counting on the government or the IRA or their 401k, they may be up the creek without a paddle. So that's why I started the Rich Dad Company back in 1997.
What do you recommend? I can't wait because I haven't bought your book yet. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to read it because I need to get my act together. I mean, I'm always learning more. I can't wait, though, till the other book comes out, 8 Lessons in Military Leadership for Entrepreneurs. Give us a sneak peek on that.
Well, it's about, you know, we have a high number of veterans who are unemployed. I mean, they're homeless, a lot of them. What I'm saying is that the military gave them some of the best training to become entrepreneurs, not employees. And they, you know, they gave them such things as, you know, unity, courage,
initiative,
skills. And so most of our veterans are actually natural entrepreneurs, except when they come back from the war, they're trying to fit into the corporate world. And a lot of them just don't fit. So 8 Lessons for military leadership is about how every military person, from the lowest private to the general, are already good entrepreneurs because they have great training.
Flesh that out a bit, then I want to take some calls because it is fascinating. I found vets do real good in my operation because I just say, here's the mission, have integrity, you know, report news, have an open bias to telling the truth, and from a perspective of freedom, get out there. We want people to really dominate and break big stories. And I found people like Joe Biggs, they just get out there. They get it. They have a mission. I turn them loose.
Yeah. Like when I was, you know, I was a Marine pilot, flew the helicopter gunship. And if my major came down to me and says, hey, Lieutenant, take out that machine gun nest, he didn't say, well, I don't feel like it. I mean, he just, you did it or died. I mean, that is how Marines and most military people are trained.
What type of gunship? Was it a Cobra or what was it?
Both. I flew the Huey gunship and the Cobra gunship.
Wow, I'd like to have you on about that. That's interesting.
I really loved it. But anyway, that's why military personnel are trained to be entrepreneurs. They're going to get the job done. And that's why the Marines had so many problems in Fallujah. Not to berate my brother in the Army, but the Marines took Fallujah, and then the Army went back in. They lost it, and Marines went back in. But a lot of my friends were brought up on court-martialed because they did the job. They killed people. And I hate to say that, but that's what Marines are trained to do.
Yeah, what about political correctness in the military? I mean, you know, I'm against those wars, but once they're there, you know, they're going to court-martial people because you're getting shot at from a house, they shoot the house up, and then they shoot a civilian. I mean, you can't blame the individual, in my view. I'm sorry.
It's disgusting. My friend is a 3-star general, and he has to be politically correct. You know, he's my roommate in Vietnam, and he says, I cannot say what I want to say because it looks bad upon the Marine Corps. And when your generals are not allowed to speak, we have a serious political correctness problem. And it's sad. Look, ISIS is actually doing us a big favor right now. They're really upsetting the whole world. You know, if they actually put on video of them beheading a little kid, the world would come and blow them out of the water. But right now, they're only beheading men. But when they start beheading women and kids, I think then the Marine Corps will step up.
Well, they're doing it. They're just smart enough not to put it on video. And I tell you, what a despicable group of dirtbags. I mean, those people are just unbelievable. You look at the eyes of those people. They just look like a bunch of Charles Mansons. I don't know how you can find such large groups of people that have a Charlie Manson look in their eye all the time. I mean, only people I know that look like that are on PCP. Robert, what do you think's going on with these people?
Alex, I have no idea. Look, you know, I had a good friend who is Muslim. And I never met a man who hated so much. He's a good friend, but he hated Jews. And I kept asking him, I said, Saleh, how in the world can you hate somebody that much? You know, because I hate, but I don't hate that much. And that's the question, is how could you go and do basically atrocities to your fellow human being and think you're doing it in the name of God? It is beyond my comprehension. So that's why I think we need to be stronger, but we also take different approaches that neutralizes ISIS threat.
Well, of course, and you know, the West helped set up ISIS to take out Syria. Now it's come back. It is a mess. You ready to take some phone calls, Robert?
Sure.
Let's do it. Mike in Virginia, you're on the air with our guest, the author of the new book, Second Chance. Go ahead.
Yeah. First off, I can't believe I got on. But anyway, yeah, I have a question. I have some silver. I have some gold. I got a lot of silver, let's put it that way, and some gold. My house has been paid for years ago, 20 years ago. What else could I do to help protect? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. You know, congratulations for having silver. I like silver personally. I love gold. I have a lot of gold and silver. And the difference is between your philosophy and my philosophy is I like debt. You see, the reason I teach people how to use debt is because debt is the new money. See, what happened after 1971 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard? The dollar became debt. And so when the financial pundits are telling the poor middle class to get out of debt, what the rich are doing is using debt. Ask your banker this question. Does a banker want your savings, or does he want you to borrow millions of dollars from him?
And this is simple, but it's also complex. There's different philosophies. I would either go with the pay for your house, but get one at a good bargain, stay in it forever, and then run entrepreneurial businesses and, you know, do things like that and come up with new products. Or you can go with the whole debt model in businesses, but you got to be smart, pretty darn smart, to go with your model. I think that's the only problem with your model, Robert, is that if you know what you're doing, it's the best model. It's what the insiders use, but the general public is going to get basically screwed over because they're not going to actually follow what you say. Try to explain it to people.
Well, amen. You said, if you don't have any financial education, don't do what I do. And the reason I wrote Second Chance, I got it in 3 parts: the past, the present, and the future. And again, there's pictures throughout the same whole thing so that your kids can understand it. But what you do is up to you. I learned my financial education began with my rich dad, who was my best friend's father, at age 9, teaching me to play Monopoly. And for about 30 years, we played Monopoly, adults. And today, as an adult, I play Monopoly as an adult. For the formula is 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. So in 2007, when the markets crashed, unfortunately, millions were losing everything. Guys like me were going to the very banks that set up the crash and saying, would you give me a couple of $1 million to go do this? You see, what I'm saying in Second Chance is that all coins have 3 sides: heads, tails, and in the middle, which is intelligence. To stand on the edge is intelligent. And what you're saying, I agree exactly with you, is be intelligent. Hear what I'm saying, hear what you're saying, but ultimately it's up to you, the guy on the edge, that has to make up their own mind. I made up my mind a long time ago.
That's right. I mean, the real fortune is in the arena. Fortune favors the bold, to quote British SAS. But if you're going to get in the arena, you better be ready. Alex Jones here, back live. We've got 6 minutes in this segment, 5 minutes after that, and then our guest has got to leave us. We're going to look at endocrine disruptors on record and household items and a big way to boost your health with Dr. Edward Group coming up, and other news in the next hour. A lot of key news breaking at Infowars.com that I have not gotten to. Stuff like elderly man facing 10 years over unloaded flintlock pistol. Just amazing story. Walking while Jew, what they're not telling you. And if people attacking Jews in Europe get political support, or now this sit-in Black Lives Matter, where black folks go in and kind of rough up and get in white people's faces, this is just racism being promoted, and it's more divide and conquer. We should all just come together for freedom. I know it's a liberal cause celeb to hate Jews, but it's going nowhere. And the globalists are promoting it. And I assure you, if every Jew on the face of the earth was teleported to the moon, we would still have major problems. So it's a scapegoat, it's an excuse, and it's sick. That's all I have to say on the subject. We're going back to our guest, richdad.com, Robert Kiyosaki. Let's go ahead and go to Chris in Washington, then Vincent, Bubba, John, Eric, and others. Chris, your question for Robert.
Yeah, my question is, I lost a job of 12 years, turned the 401k into an IRA Roth at a credit union, and I'm wondering if that's really a safer place to put it. I also have recently put it in my wife's name, so she's a Japanese national. I could wire it to Japan. But I'm wondering if those accounts would be frozen, would even keep me from wiring funds internationally. And is the 401k Roth, because it's a credit union, make it more safe?
Again, I'm going to say all coins have 3 sides: heads, tails, and the edge. I don't have an IRA, I don't have a 401k, and I don't have a Roth, simply because my rich dad taught me how to manage my money without the control of the government. See, the 401k and the Roth IRA are government, vehicles, basically. And they're doing their best to get the poor and middle class to do something for their retirement. Now, that's good for most people. I wouldn't do it. I'm concerned about them because the market's at all-time tops. So like I've always said, what you do is up to you. What I do is what I can do. For example, if Mark Zuckerberg called me right now and says, hey, why don't you start Facebook? I can't even use my cell phone, much less, create a.
So you got to financially be involved in what you know.
Yeah. And what your experiences are and all this, like, a farmer would do something different. A secretary would do something different. A doctor would do something different. But and I'm not against it, what the big banks have trained us to do is go to school, but they give us no financial education. Save money, which means give their money to the bank, pay your taxes, get out of debt, and invest for the long term in the stock market. I don't do that. And that's what Second Chance is about.
Because you can't put all your eggs in one basket, Chris. But I mean, obviously, what do you think of his idea of getting money out of the country?
Yeah, you better talk to an attorney because I'll just tell you this much: they're cracking down very, very hard.
That's right. I talked to a lot of famous people that left the country years ago, and
they're cracking down so hard right now. If you do anything even smells illegal, you're in trouble.
Robert Kiyosaki's also co-authored 2 books with Donald Trump, and a third Trump book for 2016 is being developed. We can get him on routinely when these books come out. We want to jam in a few more questions or comments here with the callers. And listen, I can have a Harry Dent on who disagrees with gold and silver, and then have a Kiyosaki on that agrees with it. I can have a Jim Rogers on. We're giving you different perspectives, but from basically an honest perspective about how stuff's rigged at the top. And the only way to survive is to know how things are rigged and basically play off of that while you expose it. I think that's what we're getting at here today. But Vincent, specifically, finishing up your question, you were going to do real estate, but you saw what was happening in it. Go ahead, your question.
I guess my the thing that became problematic to me is, how does a person succeed in a business or in real estate if so many people are living off of subsidies and things like that, and jobs are just kind of vanishing? I've noticed a lot of businesses here where I live have just closed down.
Well, that's one thing about real estate, is you got to be in the right area to be investing in it. A good question, Vincent. Robert, when is the right time to invest in real estate?
Well, the first thing is, I've been in real estate probably 45 years, and I started back in 1973, I believe. I took a little infomercial class, $385, and I learned how to buy real estate for nothing down. But as the instructor said to my little class, I was still a Marine, he says, your education begins when you leave the class. You have to go out and practice. So I went out. His instruction was each person in the class had to go look at 100 properties, not buy anything, but write an evaluation of it, and then buy something. Unfortunately, what our schools teach you is don't make mistakes. And so most people don't want to go through that process of looking at 100 properties, making a lot of mistakes, being stupid all the time. And then finally the lights go on in your head. If you're going to do real estate, stocks, bonds, currencies, goldfish, whatever you want to do, you have to go through that process of
Absolutely. You gotta lose to know how to win, to quote Aerosmith.
Well, you've got to make mistakes to learn. And that's why my poor dad, like I said, a PhD, head of education in the state of Hawaii, graduated from college in less than 2 years. The reason he was not successful is because he never made any mistakes. So when he got fired from his job as head of education for the state of Hawaii, after running for candidate for lieutenant governor as a Republican in the Communist Republic of Hawaii, he couldn't work. He didn't know what to do. Here is a guy, a PhD. He's unemployed at age 50.
And that's the monopoly cult system versus the free market, and the cult system's taking over, folks. John in Texas, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Alex, I was in high school back when Nixon took us off the gold standard. And the first thing I noticed that through the 1950s, everything I paid 5 cents or 10 cents for, comic books, soda pop, candy bars, everything started climbing.
That's right.
And it hasn't stopped since. And what I want to ask your guest is, he really thinks 2016 is when the brakes are going to burn out on the inflation engine and everything's going to go to hell?
My answer is the job of a prophet is to be wrong. I mean, Alex and I are the same guy. We're just different nationalities. We're trying to tell people, wake up. Don't be a victim of it.
Yeah, we're giving you our best guess. It doesn't mean we know everything.
Yeah, we're doing our best, like we're kind of like Howard Stern. We're shock jocks trying to say, hey, wake up, take a look around, see what's going on. Don't just do as you're told like they do in school. So I don't know. I hope it doesn't happen in 2016. But if it does, like a Boy Scout, are you prepared for it? I'll just say this last thing here is this. When that market comes down, the rich are going to get richer. What are you going to do?
That's right, because they're going to be pre-positioned, and there's things little guys can do. Then you'll get bigger, and we need the patriots, the liberty lovers, the conservatives, the classical liberals to know this stuff, so it's not just a bunch of cronies like Nancy Pelosi making money. Robert Kiyosaki, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back in a few months when the